The emergency sirens cut through my woo shift at 2:47 a.m., but it wasn't our alarm screaming. Every radio station across 3 counties was broadcasting the same evacuation order, and the control room monitors showed me exactly why. Security cameras at the perimeter fence captured figures stumbling across the access road. Wrong movements, wrong speed, wrong everything. I killed the external floodlights and watched through thermal imaging as more shapes emerged from the tree line. 18 years operating turbines, and I'd run every disaster scenario except this one. Marcus slammed through the control room door, coal dust still covering his maintenance coveralls. The highway's gridlocked. Saw it from the coal tower before I came down. Nobody's moving. They're just abandoning vehicles. His voice stayed level, but his knuckles were white around the radio handset. Behind him, I heard the distant pop of what might have been gunfire or exploding transformers. Neither option was good. Where's Chen and Davidson? I pulled up the facility schematic on my center screen, already calculating which systems we could maintain with 4 people instead of the usual day shift crew of 23. Chen's in turbine hall 2 finishing the bearing replacement. Davidson was checking the coal conveyor motors. Marcus moved to the windows overlooking the generation floor, watching the massive turbine spin at 3,600 revolutions per minute like nothing outside these walls mattered. Jake, what are you thinking? I was thinking about the 847 megawatts flowing through our transmission lines. I was thinking about hospitals running on backup generators with maybe 8 hours of diesel. I was thinking about water treatment plants that would fail without power, leaving thousands to drink contaminated water even if they survived whatever was happening out there. I was thinking about my sister, 2 counties over with my nephew. The kid was 7, and whether they'd already lost power. I'm thinking we lock this place down and keep these turbines spinning. I activated the facility-wide intercom. Chen, Davidson, control room now. We've got maybe 20 minutes before this situation reaches our fence. The Blackstone power station wasn't designed to be a fortress, but the engineers who built it in 1987 had made it robust. Concrete walls 3 feet thick, redundant security systems, a coal reserve yard with direct rail access, water intake from the river with its own pumping station. The facility could theoretically run indefinitely, as long as we had fuel and someone to operate it. The question was whether 4 men could do the job of 24. Chen arrived first, wiping hydraulic fluid from his hands. The news is saying to head for the military shelters downtown. Every station same message. Downtown's 40 minutes away in normal traffic. Marcus said, "Look at the cameras." I switched the main monitor to our perimeter feeds. The access road was packed with stalled vehicles. People were running between the cars. Some were chasing others. At this distance, through low-light cameras, the details were unclear, but the chaos was crystal sharp. A man fell near our gate. 3 figures dropped on him. Even without audio, I understood what was happening. Davidson burst through the door, breathing hard. There's someone at the west service entrance trying to get in. Civilian truck, 2 people. They're screaming about the dead coming back. The dead coming back, Chen repeated, his engineer's mind rejecting the impossible even as evidence mounted. I'd already made my decision the moment those sirens started. Maybe I made it years ago during emergency preparedness training when they drilled into us that keeping the grid stable was critical infrastructure duty. Maybe I was just stubborn enough to believe we could hold. Here's the situation. We have 1,340 tons of coal in the reserve bunkers. Normal consumption is roughly 180 tons per day at full capacity. We can reduce load, cut non-essential transmission, and stretch that to 7 months if we're careful. You want to stay, Davidson said. Not a question. I want to keep the power on for every hospital, water facility, and emergency shelter in our service area. The backup generators they're running won't last a week. I pulled up the regional grid map, highlighting critical facilities. 47 hospitals, 16 water treatment plants. God knows how many people trying to survive whatever this is. Marcus studied the map, his operations experience already working through the logistics. We'd need to isolate the grid, cut transmission to areas we can't support, prioritize medical and water infrastructure. Can't do that from here, Chen interjected. Regional load balancing is controlled at the main dispatch center in Capital City. We'd be generating power for whatever's connected, whether it helps anyone or not. Manual circuit breakers at the switchyard, I countered. We physically disconnect transmission lines we don't want to support. It'll take time, but we can configure the distribution. Davidson moved to the window, watching those massive turbines rotate with perfect precision. 4 people to run 3 generating units. Jake, you know what you're asking. We need someone in the control room, 24/7. Boiler monitoring, fuel systems, water chemistry, ash handling, maintenance on equipment that's running non-stop. The turbines alone require daily inspections. I know. I did know. I also knew that if we walked away, if we let these turbines wind down and the grid collapse, people would die in the dark. Maybe they'd die anyway, but I couldn't leave without trying. I'm staying regardless. You 3 need to choose now, because once we lock down, we're committed. The control room fell silent except for the ambient hum of electronics and the deep vibration of the turbines below. Through the windows, the generation floor stretched out like a cathedral to industrial power. Massive pipes carrying superheated steam, turbine casings the size of buses, cable runs thick as tree trunks feeding electricity to the grid. It was beautiful in its purpose, and right now it might be the most important place in the region. Chen broke the silence. My apartment's in the evacuation zone. I've got no family here, no one waiting. If this place is defensible, I'm in. Marcus nodded slowly. My brother lives upstate. I can't reach him anyway. Might as well do something useful. Davidson took longer, staring at his phone. No signal, just the emergency broadcast scrolling across the screen. My ex-wife has our kid in Riverside. That's in our service area, isn't it? The hospital there? Riverside Memorial, I confirmed. One of the facilities we'd prioritize. Then we keep the lights on. Davidson pocketed his phone. What's first? I felt something settle in my chest. Determination mixed with dread. First, we secure the perimeter. Davidson, you and Marcus handle the gates and access points. Every entrance gets locked down except the main vehicle gate and one personnel door, both with clear sight lines. Chen, you're with me. We inventory every supply we have. Food, water, medical, spare parts. Then we configure the switchyard to isolate our grid. The people at the west gate? Davidson asked. I looked at the security feed. The truck was still there, now surrounded by stumbling figures. The driver was slumped over the wheel. I switched cameras quickly, but not before seeing the passenger door hanging open. They're gone. We can't save them. Seal that gate. Asterix if you've ever had to choose between saving yourself and trying to help everyone you can't see. You know why my hands were shaking. Hit that subscribe button. This story gets darker before it gets anywhere close to light. Asterisk, we moved fast. Marcus and Davidson headed to the ground level with bolt cutters and chain, systematically closing off access points around the facility's perimeter. The Blackstone plant covered 14 acres, most of it the coal yard, cooling pond, and switch yard. The main building housing the control room, turbine halls, and boiler structures was more compact, but still large enough that securing it properly took time we didn't have. Chen and I started in the maintenance warehouse. Shelves of spare parts stretched back into shadows. Gaskets, bearings, sensors, control modules. The facility kept substantial inventory because turbine components weren't available same day from any supplier. We had replacement parts for most critical systems, but most wasn't all. And running equipment beyond normal maintenance intervals meant failures we couldn't predict. Water treatment chemicals, Chen read from his tablet, tallying supplies. 6 months of typical consumption. Lubricating oils, 14 drums. Hydraulic fluid, 9 drums. Welding gas, maybe 3 months if we're conservative. Food and water? I was pulling open storage lockers, finding the emergency provisions required by facility regulations. Break room has vending machines and 2 fridges. Warehouse emergency supplies show 47 MREs, 20 gallons of bottled water. Chen looked up from his count. That's not even 2 weeks for 4 people. River water for drinking after we purify it. We've got the chemistry lab and testing equipment. I was already problem-solving, already adapting. The coal tower has heating elements. We can use turbine steam for cooking if needed. Food's going to be the main issue. Chen's radio crackled. Marcus's voice came through with static. Control room, we've got a situation at the main gate. Group of people in 2 vehicles requesting shelter. Maybe 8 individuals. They're not infected, just scared. I grabbed my radio. Are they alone? Any pursuit? Negative on pursuit. Roads clear both directions for now. Chen and I headed for the control room's elevated position, which gave us a view of the front approach. Through binoculars, I could see the vehicles Marcus described, a pickup truck and a sedan, both loaded with supplies. The people outside were watching the tree line nervously, bunched close together. Normal human fear responses, not the wrong movements I'd seen on the cameras earlier. We let them in. We're responsible for 8 more lives, Chen said. 4 times the food consumption. We turn them away. We're sending them to die. I studied the group. All appeared to be men, a detail that simplified certain complications. We need more manpower anyway. 8 people means we can actually staff watch rotations and handle the workload. Or it means 8 people we can't trust in a crisis. He wasn't wrong. But I was watching one of them, younger guy, maybe mid-20s, help an older man who was limping. The human gesture decided it. Marcus let them in. But they surrender any weapons first, and they understand we're running a power plant, not a refuge. They contribute or they leave. Copy that. The main gate's motor hummed as Marcus activated it from the security panel. The 2 vehicles rolled through, and the gate closed behind them with a clang that sounded more permanent than it ever had before. By the time Chen and I reached the ground level, Marcus and Davidson had the 8 newcomers lined up in the facility's vehicle bay, checking them over. I counted 3 hunting rifles, 2 pistols, and a baseball bat surrendered to our security locker. The group ranged from early 20s to maybe 60. The older man with the limp, several middle-aged guys who looked like office workers, and a pair who might have been brothers based on their similar features. I'm Jake Winters, senior operator for this facility, I said, keeping my voice steady and authoritative. You're inside because we have defensible infrastructure and critical work to do. We're keeping this plant operational to support emergency services in the region. If you stay, you follow our rules and you work. If that's not acceptable, leave now before we seal up completely. The oldest one, the limping man, stepped forward. Name's Russell Grant. I taught shop class for 30 years before retiring. I can handle tools and follow instructions. These boys, he gestured to the others, are all from my neighborhood. We saw what was happening and grabbed what we could. We're not looking for charity. We'll earn our keep. One of the younger ones spoke up. I'm Pete Kowalski. I drove a forklift at a distribution center. If you've got material handling equipment, I can run it. Another introduced himself as Dennis Mora, claiming electrical experience from a previous job with the utility company. The brothers were Liam and Connor Hess, both with construction backgrounds. The others offered various skills: mechanical aptitude, truck driving, security guard experience. None were power plant operators, but I hadn't expected that. What mattered was whether they could follow instructions and handle the physical demands. Marcus, get them set up in the administrative wing offices. There are couches and floor space. Chen, show Dennis our electrical systems. Test his knowledge before we trust him near anything critical. Davidson, take Pete to the coal yard and see if he really knows heavy equipment. I turned back to the group. We've got maybe 4 hours until dawn. Eat if you need to, rest if you can. Morning briefing at 0600, and then we start organizing this place for a long-term operation. Russell lingered as the others dispersed. Son, you mind if I ask what the plan is? Long-term, I mean. I appreciated the directness. Keep the turbines running, maintain the grid for critical facilities, survive until someone reestablishes order. And if nobody reestablishes order, then we keep the turbines running anyway. I met his eyes. People are going to need electricity whether this ends in a week or a year. This facility is designed to operate for decades. We've got fuel, water, and infrastructure. What we do here might be the difference between civilization hanging on and complete collapse. Russell studied me for a long moment, then nodded. My grandson's at Riverside Memorial. Cancer treatment. If that hospital stays powered, he's got a chance. Then we make sure the hospital stays powered. He limped away toward the administrative wing, and I stood alone in the vehicle bay, listening to the deep thrum of the turbines transmitted through the concrete floor. Somewhere out there, society was tearing itself apart. In here, we had purpose and structure. I just had to keep it that way. The next 3 hours were controlled chaos. Marcus and I reconfigured the control room for extended operations, setting up cots in the back corner and organizing shift schedules on the main whiteboard. Chen reported that Dennis Mora actually knew his way around high-voltage systems, a legitimately useful addition to our crew. Davidson confirmed Pete could handle the coal loader, which meant fuel management just got significantly easier. By 0500 hours, I had a working organizational structure, 4 teams of 3, rotating 8-hour shifts. Each team needed someone with facility knowledge, me, Marcus, Chen, or Davidson, paired with 2 of the newcomers. The 4th team would be off shift, resting, and available for emergency response. Control room operations, turbine monitoring, and coal handling would run continuously. Maintenance would be scheduled during off-peak hours when we could reduce generation without impacting critical loads. I was updating the assignment board when the perimeter alarms triggered. Every monitor in the control room switched to security feeds automatically. The eastern fence, near the cooling pond, showed approximately 40 figures pressed against the chain link. Not climbing, not cutting, just pushing with persistent, mindless pressure. Marcus, you seeing this? I was already pulling up the fence integrity sensors. Yeah, that section's rated for vehicle impact. It'll hold. He zoomed one of the cameras, enhancing the image. The figures were definitely not right. Wrong posture, wrong movement patterns, and several showed obvious injuries that should have been incapacitating. How do they know we're here? Lights, sound, maybe just random wandering. I checked the other perimeter sections, more figures approaching from multiple directions, drawn to our facility like moths to flame. We need to do something about the external lighting. We're advertising our position. Chen joined us at the monitors, coffee mug in hand. Shut down the perimeter floods, keep only the minimal safety lighting required for operations. Make us less visible. And do it. I watched the figures at the fence. They weren't coordinating, weren't using tools or tactics, just raw, persistent pressure. The fence would hold for now, but if numbers increased significantly, infrastructure had limits. And we need a long-term fence reinforcement plan. Steel bracing, maybe concrete barriers at key points. We've got materials in the construction yard, Marcus confirmed. Rebar, concrete mix, welding equipment. Connor and Liam claim construction experience. Put them to work. The eastern sky was showing the first gray hint of dawn when I called the 0600 briefing. All 12 of us gathered in the turbine hall's break area, a space with tables, lockers, and windows overlooking the generation floor. I'd printed facility maps and load schedules, spreading them across the table like battle plans. Here's our situation, I started, keeping my tone matter-of-fact. We're operating 3 generating units with a combined capacity of 847 megawatts. Normal operation requires 23 staff across 3 shifts. We have 12 people. That means everyone works, everyone learns multiple roles, and everyone stays alert. I pointed to the regional grid map. Our service area covers 3 counties. We're going to manually isolate the grid to essential facilities only. Hospitals, water treatment, emergency shelters. That means physically disconnecting transmission lines at the switchyard. Marcus and Dennis will handle that today. Why cut off parts of the grid? One of the newcomers asked. Travis, the former security guard. Because we can't generate enough power for everything, and we don't have enough coal to waste electricity lighting empty houses. We prioritize survival infrastructure. I moved to the fuel logistics chart. Pete, you're on coal handling. We need consistent fuel flow to the boilers, but we're rationing. Run the conveyor system for scheduled periods only, not continuously. Pete nodded, taking notes on a salvage notepad. Connor and Liam, you're starting fence reinforcement. Chen will show you which sections need priority bracing. Russell, you're with Davidson learning turbine maintenance. I need you capable of handling minor repairs. I looked around the table, meeting each person's eyes. This isn't temporary. We're not waiting for rescue. We're establishing a long-term operation to keep critical infrastructure powered. Questions? What about food? Liam asked the obvious concern. Rationing what we have. Fishing the cooling pond. It's stocked with bass and catfish. There's a maintenance shed with gardening tools. We can start growing vegetables in available space. We make it work. I didn't mention that 12 people would burn through our food supplies in under 2 weeks, or that I had no idea if fishing and gardening would produce enough. Sometimes leadership meant projecting confidence you didn't fully feel. What about those things outside? Travis gestured toward the windows, though the infected weren't visible from this angle. They don't use tools, don't coordinate, just persist. We keep the fences intact, we stay inside, we maintain operational security. This facility has survived storms, floods, and equipment failures. We'll survive this. I rolled up the maps. Shift assignments are posted in the control room. Team leads are me, Marcus, Chen, and Davidson. You report to your team lead, you follow procedures, you stay alive. Now let's get to work. They dispersed to their assignments, and I headed back to the control room with Marcus. Through the windows, I watched the sun rise over the cooling pond, light spreading across the facility's industrial landscape. The turbines kept spinning at exactly 3,600 revolutions per minute, generators pumping electricity into the grid with perfect consistency. Everything felt normal inside these walls, even as the world outside collapsed. You really think we can hold this place? Marcus asked quietly. I think we don't have a choice. I settled into the operator's chair, scanning the dozen screens showing temperatures, pressures, flows, and voltages. The moment we stop, people die, so we don't stop. The first full day of operation taught us exactly how unprepared we were. Small issues we'd never considered became critical problems. The facility cafeteria normally received daily food deliveries. We had maybe 3 days of perishables and a week of dry goods. The bathroom supplies were running low because we'd gone from 23 people to 12, using facilities designed for 3 shifts, not 24-hour occupation. The sleeping arrangements in the administrative wing were cramped and uncomfortable, affecting rest quality. But we adapted. Chen organized the storage areas, finding forgotten supplies in back corners. Pete proved remarkably competent with the coal handling equipment, maintaining fuel flow without wasting resources. Dennis helped Marcus isolate the switchyard, disconnecting transmission lines to reduce our load from 847 megawatts to a more sustainable 420 megawatts focused on critical facilities. I spent most of that first day in the control room, monitoring systems and training Russell on basic turbine operations. The older man learned quickly despite his age, asking insightful questions about steam temperatures and bearing vibrations. By evening, he could interpret the basic displays well enough to alert a qualified operator if something went wrong. Connor and Liam made impressive progress on fence reinforcement, welding steel bracing to the chain link sections where infected had congregated. The mindless pressure continued throughout the day, more figures arriving to push against our perimeter. We counted over 200 by nightfall, clustered at multiple points around the 14-acre facility. They're attracted to something, Chen observed during the evening briefing. Noise, light, vibration. Something about this facility draws them. The turbines produce low-frequency vibration that travels through the ground, I explained. They might be sensing that. But we can't shut down to hide. We need the power for the hospitals. Speaking of which, Dennis pulled out a hand-drawn map of the electrical distribution system. I climbed the transmission tower this afternoon to verify the line configurations. We're successfully feeding power to Riverside Memorial, County General, and 3 smaller medical centers. Water treatment plants are all energized. But there's a problem. I leaned forward. Show me. This transmission line here. He pointed to a route heading northeast. It's shared infrastructure. We can't isolate just the hospital. We're also powering about 400 residential homes and 2 shopping centers. Dead weight on the system, consuming power we don't want to provide. Can we reconfigure at a substation? Not remotely. Someone would need to go to the Valley Road substation, about 8 miles from here, and manually open specific breakers. I absorbed that. 8 miles through infected territory to reduce our electrical load by maybe 30 megawatts. The calculation was brutal. Was it worth risking lives for a modest efficiency gain? Before I could answer, Travis interrupted. Jake, we've got movement at the main gate. We rushed to the monitors. A single vehicle, a reinforced delivery truck, sat at our entrance with headlights illuminating the gate. A figure stood in the truck bed, waving both arms. The surrounding area showed scattered infected, but they hadn't overwhelmed the vehicle yet. They're trying to get in, Marcus said. I grabbed binoculars, studying the truck. The cargo area appeared loaded with supplies, crates, containers, equipment. The person waving held a sign, letters painted in reflective orange, food plus fuel, trade for electricity. They want to trade, I said slowly. The implications cascaded through my mind. We needed food desperately, but opening that gate meant risk, meant negotiation, meant acknowledging we weren't isolated but connected to whatever survivor networks were forming out there. Could be a trap, Travis warned. Get us to open up, rush us with armed people. Could be our food supply for the next month, Russell countered. We're not going to fish and garden our way through 12 people's caloric needs. I studied the truck through the binoculars. Single occupant visible, no signs of additional personnel. The infected were closing in slowly, drawn by the noise and movement. Decision time again. Marcus Davidson, arm up from the security locker. Open the gate just enough for the truck, then close it immediately. Chen, you're with them as Overwatch. Everyone else, stay inside but be ready. My 3 senior operators moved out with practiced efficiency. I watched through the cameras as they positioned themselves strategically. Davidson at the gate controls, Marcus covering with a rifle from behind a concrete barrier, Chen on the roof access with a clear sight line. The coordination was smooth despite the stress, a testament to years working together in a facility where mistakes could be fatal. The gate motor hummed. The truck rolled forward quickly, and the gate sealed behind it with metallic finality. Several infected stumbled after it too late, and resumed their mindless pressing against the fence. I met the vehicle in the bay with Travis and Pete flanking me. The driver climbed down. A man in his 40s, wearing dirty outdoor gear, face weathered and eyes alert. He raised empty hands immediately. Name's Kevin Torres. I run a supply depot about 15 miles north. Before all this, I distributed to construction sites. He gestured to his cargo. I've got food, diesel fuel, propane, batteries, and medical supplies. I need electricity. Or what? I asked directly. I've got 43 people at my depot. We're set up pretty well. Fenced perimeter, supplies, weapons. But our backup generator's eating through fuel, and we need power for refrigeration, water pumps, and lighting. I heard this plant was still operating. I can see I heard right. He looked around at our facility with an appraising eye. You keep running, and I'll make sure you're supplied. Regular deliveries, whatever you need that I can source. How do you get here through the infected? Travis asked suspiciously. Reinforced truck. Move at night, don't stop for anything. Lost 2 vehicles learning that lesson. Kevin's expression hardened. Those things are everywhere now, but they're slow and stupid. You can navigate around them if you're smart. I evaluated the offer. A reliable supply line would solve our most critical resource problem, but providing electricity to his depot meant extending transmission to his location, assuming infrastructure existed. Where exactly is your depot? Off Highway 17, near the old industrial park. You'd know it as the Morton Logistics Building. Dennis pulled up a map on his tablet. That's on the northern transmission route. Line 7 currently isolated. We'd need to reconfigure the switchyard to feed that line, which means also powering the residential areas along that route. More dead weight on the system, but with a tangible benefit. How much food are we talking about? Kevin lowered the truck's tailgate, revealing his cargo. Crates of canned goods, dried beans, rice, flour, salt, fuel drums marked diesel and propane, medical supply boxes with recognizable Red Cross symbols, batteries in various sizes. This load is a gesture of good faith. I provide more when you get my depot powered. I've got a warehouse full of supplies I rescued from distribution centers before they got overrun. It was too good to refuse, and Kevin probably knew it. 1-week trial. We power your line, you make a delivery every 3 days. If you miss a delivery, we cut the power. If you try anything hostile, we cut the power and you're on your own. Fair terms. Kevin extended his hand and I shook it. I'll be back in 3 days. Oh, and one more thing. There's another group you should know about. Military remnant, maybe 30 soldiers, holed up at the National Guard Armory in Fairview. They've been broadcasting requests for power. Might be worth talking to them. Noted. I gestured for Pete and Liam to help unload the supplies. Davidson will give you a radio frequency we're monitoring. Use it before approaching, or we won't open the gate. Kevin climbed back into his truck, and we reversed the gate procedure, sending him out into the darkness. As the truck's taillights disappeared down the access road, I stood in the vehicle bay feeling the weight of what had just happened. We'd gone from isolated operators to participants in a survivor economy. That meant opportunity, but it also meant complications. The next 72 hours established patterns that would define our existence. Dennis and Marcus spent an entire day reconfiguring the switchyard to power Kevin's northern line, which meant bringing an additional 85 megawatts online for infrastructure we weren't previously supporting. I compensated by reducing voltage slightly across the system, a technical violation of grid standards. But grid standards assumed a functioning regulatory authority that no longer existed. Chen created a maintenance schedule that rotated personnel through critical inspection points. Every 8 hours, someone physically walked the turbine halls, checking bearing temperatures, listening for unusual vibrations, monitoring steam pressures at multiple stages. The turbines were designed for this kind of continuous operation. But design specifications assumed professional maintenance crews and readily available replacement parts. We had neither luxury. Russell proved invaluable beyond his mechanical aptitude. The older man had a steady presence that kept morale stable during the inevitable frustrations and setbacks. When Liam and Connor got into a heated argument over welding technique during fence reinforcement, Russell mediated with the calm authority of someone who'd spent decades managing teenagers. When Pete discovered our coal reserves were depleting faster than my initial calculations predicted, Russell helped crunch the numbers and develop a more accurate consumption model. That model wasn't encouraging. At our current generation rate, feeding 505 megawatts to the grid continuously, we had maybe 4.5 months of coal, not the 6 I'd optimistically projected. The boilers consumed 165 tons per day, and our reserve bunkers held approximately 1,340 tons. Simple math, brutal implications. We need to reduce output, Chen said during our evening operations meeting on day 4. Cut another 100 megawatts, extend the timeline. Cut what? I pulled up the facility list. Riverside Memorial uses 8 megawatts continuous. County General uses 12. The water treatment plants are running at minimal capacity already. Everything we're powering is genuinely critical. Then we need more coal, Marcus stated flatly. There's a rail depot 7 miles west. Coal trains used to deliver there before routing to us. Might still be loaded cars sitting on the rails. Might be, I echoed. And getting to them means organizing an expedition through infected territory, hijacking a locomotive, and somehow operating the rail switches to route cars back here. You know how to drive a train? Marcus shrugged. Pete says he worked summers for a rail yard during college. Claims he can handle a locomotive. I looked at Pete, who nodded reluctantly. I mostly did yard switching, moving cars around the facility. Never drove mainline, but the basic controls are similar. Diesel-electric engine, throttle brake, reverser. If the locomotive's fueled and functional, I could probably move it. Probably isn't a strong endorsement for a mission that'll risk 6 people's lives. But even as I said it, I was calculating. 7 miles there, assuming the rail line was clear. Load as many coal cars as the locomotive could pull. 7 miles back, if we could deliver even 5 cars, that was approximately 500 tons. 3 more weeks of operation at current rates. The math was compelling. I'll lead the expedition, Davidson volunteered. Take Pete for the locomotive, Travis and Dennis for security, Connor and Liam for heavy work if we need to clear obstacles. 6 people is half our crew, Chen protested. If something goes wrong, we lose critical personnel. If we run out of coal, we lose everything, Davidson countered. The mission's risky, but sitting here watching our fuel deplete isn't sustainable. He was right, which didn't make the decision easier. Command meant accepting risk with incomplete information, meant sending people into danger for abstract concepts like long-term sustainability. I studied the regional map, tracing the rail line from our facility to the depot. The route passed through mostly industrial areas and undeveloped land, potentially lower infected density than residential zones. You leave at dawn tomorrow. Take one of the maintenance trucks, rifles from the security locker, and the portable radios. Stay in constant communication. If the depot's not viable, you abort and return immediately. No heroics, no unnecessary risks. I met Davidson's eyes. You've got 12 hours to plan the operation. Use them wisely. The meeting dispersed, leaving me alone in the control room with the 3rd shift monitoring duty. Through the windows, the turbine hall stretched out in industrial magnificence, lit by overhead sodium lamps that cast everything in orange-yellow tones. The turbines spun with hypnotic consistency, converting thermal energy to mechanical rotation to electrical current with elegant efficiency. 47 years these machines had operated, through economic downturns and regulatory changes and technological evolution. Now they were powering what might be the last remnants of civilized infrastructure in 3 counties. My radio crackled. Jake, this is Gate Security. Kevin Torres is approaching on schedule, requesting clearance to open. Right on time, as promised. I headed down to the vehicle bay, where Marcus was already positioning himself for security coverage. The gate procedure had become routine. Quick open, vehicle through, immediate closure. Kevin's truck rolled in with its cargo of supplies exactly 72 hours after his initial visit. Right on schedule, I said as Kevin climbed down. Impressive. Well, I'm a logistics professional. Schedules matter. He grinned, but it didn't reach his eyes. The man looked exhausted, with dark circles and fresh scratches on his forearms. Got your food, fuel, and medical supplies. Also brought something extra, a shortwave radio and antenna kit. Figured you might want to monitor what's left of organized communications. The crew unloaded his truck while Kevin walked with me toward the control room. What's the situation out there? I asked. Deteriorating. The infected are clustering in urban areas. More prey density, I guess. Rural zones are relatively clear if you're smart about movement. But organized resistance is fragmenting. That National Guard unit I mentioned, they lost their armory to a breach 2 days ago. Survivors scattered. Some headed to the capital, some went rural. He paused at the control room windows, watching the turbines. You're keeping the hospitals running. People know that. You're going to start getting more attention, both good and bad. Define bad. There's a group operating out of the Eastern Industrial District, maybe 20 guys well armed, led by someone calling himself Garrett. They're consolidating control over survivor camps, demanding tribute for protection. Heard they've been asking questions about the power plant. Kevin's expression turned serious. They haven't approached you yet, but they will. And when they do, they're not going to politely trade like I do. Perfect. Another complication for the growing list. We're defensible here. Fence reinforcement is ongoing. We've got weapons, and we're not exactly accessible. Just giving you advance warning. Garrett's people are organized and ruthless. They'll assess you as a target, and they'll figure out that controlling the power gives them leverage over everyone who needs it. Kevin headed back to his truck. 3 days, same time. Stay sharp. After he departed, I assembled the shortwave radio kit in the control room. The antenna installation took 2 hours, mounting it on the roof and running coaxial cable down to the receiver. Once powered up, I scanned through frequencies, finding mostly static and automated emergency broadcasts that had been looping for days. But on a few channels, I caught human voices, isolated survivor groups reporting their status, asking for information, seeking contact with any remaining authority. One transmission caught my attention. Fairview Hospital requesting immediate assistance. Generator fuel depleted. Critical patients on life support. Any emergency services, please respond. Fairview Hospital. I pulled up the grid map, outside our current service area, but on a transmission line we deliberately isolated to conserve power. The facility was relatively small, maybe 150 beds, but critical patients on life support meant people dying right now in the dark. I could reconfigure the switchyard to feed that line. It would cost us another 6 megawatts continuously, reducing our coal timeline by approximately 4 days. 4 days of operation in exchange for keeping people alive at Fairview. The calculation was straightforward, but the decision wasn't. You're thinking about powering them, Marcus said from behind me. He'd been listening to the radio traffic. 15 patients on life support, according to their transmission. Dialysis machines, ventilators, surgical lighting for emergency procedures. They're dark, Marcus. People are dying. And if we power them, we burn through our coal 4 days faster, which might mean we can't power everyone else when it matters later. He sat down at the adjacent console. I'm not saying don't do it. I'm saying acknowledge the trade-off. I'm acknowledging it. I was staring at the grid schematic running scenarios. If Davidson's expedition succeeds tomorrow, We get enough coal to cover this decision and more. If it fails, we're making choices we'll regret regardless. So it depends on a mission that hasn't happened yet. Everything depends on things that haven't happened yet. That's called the future. I grabbed the radio microphone, switching to the frequency where Fairview was broadcasting. Fairview Hospital. This is Blackstone Power Station. We read your emergency. Stand by for power restoration within 2 hours. Repeat. Power restoration in 2 hours. The response came immediately. A woman's voice cracking with emotion. Blackstone. This is Dr. Sarah Chen at Fairview. Are you serious? We've got 19 patients critical. We're losing people. Doctor, I'm serious. Conserve battery backup for the next 2 hours. We're reconfiguring our grid now. I switched off before she could respond with gratitude I didn't deserve. Then turned to Marcus. Let's go reconfigure some breakers. The switchyard work took 90 minutes in the dark, manually opening and closing massive circuit breakers while wearing insulated gloves and following lockout-tagout procedures that felt absurdly bureaucratic given the circumstances. But electrical safety wasn't negotiable. 480 kilovolts could incinerate a person before the nervous system registered pain. We verified the configuration 3 times before energizing the line. Back in the control room, I watched the voltage and current readings stabilize as Fairview Hospital drew power from our grid. 6.3 megawatts continuous load, right within expected parameters. Somewhere 15 miles away, ventilators resumed breathing for patients. Dialysis machines resumed filtering blood. Lights illuminated surgical theaters. We'd extended our reach and shortened our timeline simultaneously. The radio crackled. Blackstone, this is Dr. Chen. Powers restored. You just saved 19 lives. I don't know how to thank you. Stay alive, doctor. Keep your patients alive. That's thanks enough. I set down the microphone and added Fairview Hospital to our grid map, another red dot representing people whose survival now depended on our turbines spinning. Chen entered the control room with coffee and a concerned expression. Heard you extended the grid. We're at 511 megawatts now. That's pushing our sustainable capacity. I know the numbers. I did know them. I also knew that numbers were abstractions and dying patients were concrete. Davidson's expedition succeeds, and we're fine. It doesn't, and we start making harder choices. And if we keep extending the grid every time someone broadcasts an emergency, we'll run out of coal before summer. Chen wasn't arguing, just stating mathematics. Eventually, we have to say no. Today isn't that day. Dawn arrived with clear skies and unseasonable warmth. Davidson's expedition team assembled in the vehicle bay, 6 men loading rifles, tools, and emergency supplies into one of our heavy maintenance trucks. Pete looked nervous but determined. Travis checked weapons with professional competence. Connor and Liam shared a private conversation, probably the kind of exchange brothers have before dangerous undertakings. Rules of engagement, Davidson addressed the team. We avoid contact with infected if possible. We don't stop for anything or anyone except mission-critical obstacles. If someone gets bitten, they don't come back in the truck. No exceptions, no arguments. Questions, nobody questioned. They all understood the stakes. I handed Davidson a portable radio and a hand-drawn map marking the rail depot location. Check in every 30 minutes. If we lose contact for more than an hour, I'm assuming you're not coming back and planning accordingly. Cheerful thought. Davidson clapped my shoulder. Keep the lights on. We'll be back with coal. The truck rolled out through the main gate, and we sealed up behind them. I watched from the control room as they navigated down the access road, around abandoned vehicles, and finally disappeared into the tree line. Then it was just waiting, monitoring the radio, and hoping competence and luck would be sufficient. The first check-in came at 0630. Blackstone, this is Expedition 1. 2 miles out, roads are clear. Minimal infected contact. Continuing to objective. 0700, Blackstone Expedition 1. 4 miles passing through residential area, higher infected density, but they're dispersed, moving slow to avoid attracting attention. 0730. Blackstone Expedition 1. 6 miles approaching the depot. We can see rail cars from here, lots of them, assessing the situation. Then silence. 0800 came and went, with no transmission. 0830, still nothing. I paced the control room, watching the clock, fighting the urge to call them and potentially compromise their operational security. At 0843, the radio finally crackled. Blackstone, this is Davidson. We've got a situation. This is where everything I thought I understood about keeping the lights on got complicated. If you're wondering whether we made the right calls, keep watching, because I'm still not sure. Hit that subscribe button and drop a comment about what you'd have done. Astraseed. Define situation, I transmitted back, keeping my voice level. The depot has approximately 40 loaded coal cars, just sitting on the rails. Good news is there are 2 functional locomotives with fuel. Bad news is there's an encampment of survivors here, maybe 60 people living in the rail office buildings. They're claiming the coal as their resource. They want to negotiate. Survivors claiming the coal, of course. Every resource was going to be contested now, every supply cache a potential conflict point. What's their leadership structure? Guy named Malcolm Reeves, former rail supervisor. He's reasonable but firm. Says the coal keeps them warm, gives them something to trade. He'll let us take 5 cars if we provide electricity to the depot. Otherwise, no deal. I pulled up regional maps trying to locate the depot relative to transmission infrastructure. Marcus, listening to the conversation, was already checking electrical distribution. The depot's on the western grid section, currently isolated. We'd need to reconfigure significantly to reach it, probably adding 15 megawatts of load for the infrastructure between here and there. 15 megawatts for 5 coal cars, 500 tons of fuel for maybe 12 days of operation at current rates. The trade was objectively worthwhile, but it established a precedent. Everyone with leverage could demand power in exchange for resources. We'd become not just operators, but brokers in a survival economy. Davidson put Malcolm on the radio. A different voice came through, older and gravelly. This is Malcolm Reeves. You're the Blackstone plant? I'm Jake Winters, senior operator. You're occupying rail infrastructure with coal we need to maintain critical facilities, hospitals, water treatment, emergency services. I understand that, and I respect it. But this coal also keeps 60 people from freezing at night and gives us trade value with other survivor groups. I'm not handing it over for nothing. Malcolm's tone was matter-of-fact, not hostile. You power our depot. We give you access to the coal. You can come back for more loads as needed. It's a fair exchange. How much coal are we talking about total, including what's in those cars? Maybe 4,000 tons here at the depot. Plus, I know where 2 more rail yards are with loaded cars. You want long-term fuel security, you want me as an ally. That was 5 months of operation, maybe 6 if we carefully managed consumption. Access to additional rail yards could extend our timeline indefinitely. Malcolm was offering not just immediate resources, but sustained partnership. The cost was 15 megawatts continuously, approximately 7% reduction in our coal reserves over time, offset by the substantial fuel access. I need to consult with my team. Stand by. I muted the radio and turned to Marcus and Chen, who'd both been listening. Assessments? Electrically feasible, Marcus said. It'll take a full day to reconfigure the western grid, but we can do it. Strategically sound, Chen added. 4,000 tons plus future access outweighs the operational cost, and having an allied group at the depot gives us a supply line partner. Russell, who'd been quietly monitoring from the corner, spoke up. That's 60 people who could turn hostile if you refuse. Better to have them as partners than enemies. I unmuted the radio. Malcolm, you've got a deal. We'll need 24 hours to reconfigure our electrical distribution. Your depot gets powered. We get access to the coal. But this partnership requires mutual respect. You don't cut us off, we don't cut you off. Agreed. Your people are welcome to take the 5 cars now as a gesture of good faith. I'll help them couple the locomotive and clear the tracks. Davidson, you heard that. Work with Malcolm. Get those cars coupled and bring them home. But verify the goodwill. Make sure this isn't a setup. Copy that. Expedition 1 out. The wait was excruciating. I occupied myself with planning the western grid reconfiguration, mapping out which breakers needed adjustment and which transmission lines required energizing. The work was complex but straightforward. Exactly the kind of technical problem-solving that kept my mind from spiraling into worst-case scenarios about Davidson's team. At 13:20 hours, I heard the distant sound every power plant operator knows intimately. The rumble of a diesel locomotive. I stepped outside the control room to the external walkway and saw it approaching on our facility's rail spur, a weathered locomotive pulling 5 coal cars, moving at cautious speed. Davidson was visible in the cab next to Pete, who handled the controls with evident concentration. They rolled into our coal yard, and Pete brought the locomotive to a surprisingly smooth stop exactly where the unloading equipment could access the cars. The team dismounted, and I met them at ground level. Mission success, Davidson reported, exhausted but grinning. Malcolm's people helped us couple the cars and clear a track obstruction. They're legitimately organized, with guards, rationing systems, and leadership structure. If we're going to have allies out there, they're good ones. Any trouble getting back? Some infected on the route, but we kept moving. The locomotive's horn clears them pretty effectively. They shamble away from the noise. Davidson glanced at the coal cars. Those should keep us running a while. 11 days at current consumption, I corrected. But access to Malcolm's full depot means we just bought ourselves significant breathing room. The crew dispersed to rest while Pete and Connor operated the coal unloading equipment, transferring the fresh fuel from the rail cars into our storage bunkers. The process was automated. The cars tipped to dump coal onto conveyors that carried it to the bunkers, but someone needed to supervise and manage the flow. I watched from the control room, seeing our reserve tonnage increase for the first time since this crisis began. Over the next week, patterns solidified into routine. Davidson's successful expedition had proven we could operate beyond the facility when necessary. Kevin Torres made his scheduled deliveries, bringing food and supplies in exchange for electricity. Dennis and Marcus spent 2 full days reconfiguring the western grid, bringing power to Malcolm's rail depot and establishing another trading partnership. The fence reinforcement progressed steadily, with Connor and Liam transforming our perimeter from simple chain link into a reinforced barrier that could withstand significant pressure. The infected remained a constant presence, clustering at the fence in varying numbers. We'd learned they were attracted to vibration and light, so we minimized external lighting and accepted that our turbine operations would continuously draw them. They didn't appear capable of coordinated assault, just persistent pressure and opportunistic attacks if they detected easy prey. We avoided giving them opportunities. Our crew expanded to 15 when 3 travelers arrived seeking refuge. All male, all with useful skills. Andrew was a diesel mechanic who'd worked on backup generators. Jason claimed welding expertise that Connor verified as legitimate. The third, Miguel, had medical training as a paramedic. Each addition strained our resources but added capabilities we needed. Food security improved when Russell organized a fishing operation at the cooling pond, yielding enough bass and catfish to supplement our rations. Liam started a garden using salvaged materials, planting vegetables in the spring sunshine. The yields would take months, but the psychological benefit of working toward future sustainability mattered almost as much as the calories. We established communication protocols with other survivor groups via the shortwave radio. Dr. Sarah Chen at Fairview Hospital provided medical advice over the airwaves when Miguel needed guidance. Malcolm's Rail Depot reported their status daily. Kevin Torres shared intelligence about survivor movements and threat assessments. A network was forming, fragile and improvised, but functional. And then the turbine started making noise. I was conducting my routine evening inspection in Turbine Hall 2 when I heard it, a rhythmic ticking sound that shouldn't exist. Turbines at proper operation are remarkably quiet, despite their massive size, the precision engineering ensuring smooth rotation. Ticking meant bearing wear, component degradation, or alignment issues. I immediately reduced load on Unit 2, dropping it from 282 megawatts to 200 to reduce stress. The ticking continued. I called Chen to the hall, and we spent 2 hours with diagnostic equipment, checking bearing temperatures, vibration sensors, and steam pressures. Bearing number 4 is running hot, Chen reported, studying the thermal readout. Not critical yet, but definitely elevated. And there's unusual vibration at the coupling between the turbine and generator. Bearing wear or alignment problem? Could be both. These turbines have been running continuously for 6 weeks now, well beyond normal maintenance intervals. We're overdue for a full inspection. Chen pulled up maintenance logs on his tablet. Last major bearing service was 8 months ago. These components are designed for 8,000-hour intervals between overhauls. We're probably at 10,000 hours. I did the math. A bearing replacement requires shutting down the unit for at least 12 hours, maybe 24 if we find additional issues. That cuts our generation capacity by a third. If the bearing fails catastrophically while running, it'll destroy the turbine. That cuts our capacity by a third permanently. Chen's expression was grim. We need to do the maintenance. He was right, which meant organizing a shutdown procedure, informing the facilities dependent on our power, and hoping a bearing replacement didn't reveal more serious problems. Tomorrow morning, 060. We'll shut down Unit 2, perform full bearing inspection and replacement, and bring it back online as quickly as safely possible. That night, I broadcast on the shortwave. All facilities on the Blackstone grid. Be advised we're conducting emergency maintenance tomorrow. Expect voltage fluctuations and possible brief outages as we redistribute load. Critical facilities will maintain power, but non-essential consumption should be minimized. The responses were immediate and anxious. Hospitals asking for specific timing. Malcolm's Depot requesting clarification on whether they'd lose power. Kevin Torres offering to deliver additional supplies if we needed anything for the maintenance. The network had become dependent on us, which meant our technical problems became everyone's crisis. Dawn arrived with cool wind and scattered clouds. I assembled the maintenance team: Chen, Russell, Andrew the mechanic, Connor for heavy lifting, and myself. We'd reviewed the procedures from the facility's technical manuals, gathered the necessary tools and replacement bearings from the parts inventory, and prepared the turbine for shutdown. Reducing steam flow to Unit 2, I announced over the radio from the control room. Beginning coast down sequence. The massive turbine gradually slowed from 3,600 revolutions per minute, its generator smoothly ramping down electricity production as steam valves closed. The process took 30 minutes, carefully managed to avoid thermal stress. Finally, the turbine fell silent, the first time in 6 weeks that Hall had been without the characteristic hum. Unit 2 offline, I confirmed. Marcus, redistribute load to Units 1 and 3. The grid absorbed the change. Our 2 remaining turbines picking up the 282 megawatts that Unit 2 had been generating. Voltage dipped slightly, but stabilized within acceptable parameters. We were running at capacity now. No reserve margin for equipment issues or demand spikes. Down in Turbine Hall 2, Chen supervised as we cracked open the bearing housing. The smell of hot lubricating oil filled the air. and I immediately saw the problem. The bearing surfaces showed scoring and discoloration, clear signs of inadequate lubrication and excessive heat. This bearing's been running dry, Andrew assessed, examining the damaged component. The automatic lubrication system probably has a blockage or pump failure. Can we replace it? I was already calculating timelines. If we needed to rebuild the lubrication system, this shutdown could extend to days. Bearing itself we can replace. We've got spares. But the lubrication system needs immediate attention, or we'll just burn through the new bearing. Andrew traced the oil feed lines with his flashlight. Give me 2 hours to diagnose the pump and supply lines. 2 hours became 4, as Andrew discovered not just a blockage, but a failed pressure sensor that had prevented the system from compensating for reduced flow. We cannibalized parts from Unit 3's redundant lubrication circuit, hoping one turbine's backup system could be sacrificed to keep another turbine running primary. The replacement bearing installation was textbook, carefully positioning the massive component, torquing bolts to precise specifications, verifying alignment with laser measurement tools. Russell's mechanical aptitude proved invaluable, his steady hands and experienced eye catching a misalignment that could have caused premature failure. By 1800 hours, we were ready for restart. Beginning warm-up sequence for Unit 2, I announced. This will take approximately 90 minutes. Bringing a turbine online was the reverse of shutdown, carefully admitting steam, allowing components to heat gradually, monitoring for any anomalies in temperature or vibration. The new bearing ran smooth and quiet, oil pressure reading normal, temperatures within specification. At 1930 hours, Unit 2 synchronized with the grid and began carrying load again. Unit 2 online, generating 150 megawatts, I reported. Will gradually increase to full output over the next 2 hours as we verify system stability. The tension that had gripped the control room all day finally released. Chen slumped in his chair. Russell wiped sweat from his forehead despite the cool evening air. Andrew grinned with the satisfaction of a job properly executed. 12-hour maintenance shutdown, Marcus observed. That's optimistic, given what could have gone wrong. That's also 12 hours we can't afford to repeat frequently, I countered. We need to establish preventive maintenance protocols for all 3 units. Schedule inspections before problems become critical. And with what manpower? Chen asked reasonably. We're stretched thin as it is. He had a point. 15 people to operate 3 generating units, maintain all auxiliary systems, secure the perimeter, manage resources, and conduct regular preventive maintenance. The math didn't really work even with everyone cross-trained and working extended shifts. The radio interrupted our discussion. Blackstone, this is Kevin Torres. You've got company approaching your location. 3 vehicles, approximately 15 armed individuals. They're not broadcasting friendly intent. I was at the security monitors immediately. Kevin's truck was parked on a ridgeline about a mile from our facility, giving him observation of the approach road. Through our perimeter cameras, I saw the vehicles he'd described, pickup trucks and an SUV moving purposefully toward our gate. Is this Garrett's group? I transmitted. Affirmative. I recognized 2 of his lieutenants in the lead truck. You want me to intervene? Negative. Hold your position and observe. We'll handle this. I switched to facility-wide comms. All personnel, we have potentially hostile visitors approaching the main gate. Arm up from the security locker. Nobody engages unless I give the word, but be ready. Asterisk if you've ever had to choose between fighting for what you built or surrendering to someone with more guns, you understand why my heart was hammering. Don't go anywhere. This confrontation determines everything that happens next. Asterisks, the 3 vehicles stopped at our main gate, and 8 men dismounted. They were heavily armed, rifles, tactical vests, the appearance of paramilitary organization. One stepped forward, a tall man with a shaved head and a visible sidearm. "I'm Garrett Monroe," he called out, loud enough to carry to the control room through the external speakers. "I know you can hear me. I want to talk business." I grabbed a portable radio and headed to the roof access, where I'd have a clear view of the gate while maintaining physical separation. Marcus, Davidson, and Travis positioned themselves strategically with rifles, not threatening, just visible. Shen stayed in the control room monitoring security feeds. "I'm Jake Winters," I called down from the roof. "State your business quickly. We're busy keeping infrastructure running." Garrett smiled without warmth. "That's exactly what I want to discuss. You're providing electricity to various facilities across the region. Hospitals, water treatment, some survivor camps. That's admirable, but it's also inconsistent and unfair." "Inconsistent how?" "Some groups get power, others don't. You're making arbitrary decisions about who deserves electricity. I'm proposing a more organized approach." Garrett gestured expansively. "My organization controls several survivor camps with over 200 people. We provide security, distribute resources, maintain order. We should be your primary partner in managing the electrical grid." "I distribute power based on critical infrastructure needs," I countered. "Medical facilities, water treatment, essential services, not based on who controls the most guns." "See, that's short-sighted thinking." Garrett's smile vanished. "Critical infrastructure needs security to function. Hospitals need medicine deliveries. Water plants need protection from raiders. My organization provides that security. You provide the power. Together, we create a stable network." It sounded reasonable, which made it more dangerous. Garrett was proposing we become the power source for his protection racket, legitimizing his control by giving him leverage over electricity distribution. Every camp that wanted power would have to go through him, pay his tribute, accept his authority. "I'm not interested in partnerships that concentrate control," I said carefully. "The grid serves community needs, not organizational ambitions." Garrett's expression hardened. "You're making a mistake, Winters. The old world's gone. Power, literal and political, belongs to those strong enough to hold it. You can work with me voluntarily, or I can take what I need. Your choice. My facility is defensible. My crew is competent, and I'm not intimidated by vague threats. If you want electricity, you trade for it like everyone else. Food, fuel, supplies, fair exchange. Otherwise, find your own power plant." I kept my voice level, projecting confidence I didn't entirely feel. "Stubborn. I respect that, actually." Garrett signaled his men, and they climbed back into their vehicles. "I'll give you time to reconsider, but understand, I'm not asking permission. I'm offering partnership because it's cleaner than alternatives. Think about that." The vehicles departed, and I watched them disappear down the access road before returning to the control room. The entire crew had assembled, tension written on every face. "That was a direct threat," Travis said flatly. "He's going to try taking this place." Maybe. I studied the security monitors, already thinking defensively. But assaulting a fortified facility with armed defenders isn't simple. He'll probe for weaknesses first, test our resolve, try to find an easier approach. Or he'll just wait until we're vulnerable and hit hard, Davidson countered. "We need to prepare for actual assault." He wasn't wrong. Over the next week, preparing for potential conflict became our secondary priority after keeping the turbines running. We reinforced defensive positions, established clear fields of fire from the roof and elevated positions, stockpiled ammunition, and created emergency protocols for protecting critical equipment. Connor and Liam, with their construction backgrounds, designed and built improvised barriers at key access points, concrete-filled barrels, welded steel plates, anything that would slow or channel attackers into kill zones we could cover. Andrew used his mechanical skills to create early warning systems using motion sensors salvaged from the facility's security equipment. Marcus organized defensive drills, running the crew through scenarios where attackers breached the perimeter. We practiced rapid response to multiple intrusion points, evacuation of non-essential personnel to secure areas, and procedures for shutting down critical systems if the facility became untenable. But defense consumed resources and attention we needed for operations. The constant vigilance was exhausting. Every vehicle approaching the gate triggered full alert protocols. Every radio transmission from unknown sources warranted careful evaluation. We were operating a power plant and manning a fortress simultaneously, and the strain showed. Miguel, our paramedic, started treating crew members for stress-related issues, headaches, insomnia, digestive problems. Russell mediated interpersonal conflicts that erupted from constant tension and close quarters. Morale was degrading despite our operational successes. And then the coal situation changed dramatically. Malcolm called on the radio with urgent news. Blackstone, this is Rail Depot. We've got a major problem. One of the other rail yards I mentioned, the one at Riverside Junction. There's a massive horde of infected converging on it, thousands of them. If they establish territory there, that coal is inaccessible. How much coal are we talking about? I asked, already pulling up regional maps. At least 6,000 tons in loaded cars. Maybe more. That's 8 months of fuel for you at current consumption. Malcolm's voice was urgent, but the infected are moving in fast. If you want to secure that coal, it needs to happen in the next 48 hours. After that, the concentration will be too dense to navigate safely. 8 months of fuel. That was the difference between rationing ourselves into winter and operating confidently through multiple seasons. But securing it meant organizing a major expedition into infected territory, risking personnel and equipment for potential future security. I assembled the crew in the break area, laying out the situation plainly. Malcolm's identified a major coal reserve at Riverside Junction, approximately 6,000 tons. The problem is infected concentration. We'd need to organize a convoy, fight through potentially heavy resistance, couple multiple locomotives and cars, and navigate back here through uncertain conditions. This is significantly more dangerous than Davidson's previous expedition. What's the alternative? Russell asked. We operate on our current reserves, stretch them with careful rationing, hope we can secure additional coal later from other sources. I pulled up the timeline chart. We've got maybe 4 months of coal with the fuel from Malcolm's depot. That's not catastrophic, but it's not comfortable either. 8 months versus 4 months, Chen stated. That's double our operational security. Worth significant risk. Worth whose life? Travis countered. Because this expedition could easily cost people. We're talking about navigating through thousands of infected, operating heavy equipment under pressure, and getting back safely. The mortality risk is substantial. The room fell silent. Travis had articulated the brutal calculation everyone was thinking. How much risk was acceptable for future security? How many lives could I potentially sacrifice for fuel reserves that might never become critical? I need volunteers, I said finally. This is not a mandatory mission. Anyone who steps forward understands they might not come back. We'll take only experienced personnel, people who've already operated outside the facility, who know weapons and heavy equipment. Davidson stood immediately. I'm in. Did the last expedition successfully? I can do this one. Pete followed. You need someone who can operate multiple locomotives. That's me. Connor and Liam exchanged glances, then stood together. We're in, Connor said simply. Andrew raised his hand. Diesel mechanic. You'll need someone who can troubleshoot equipment problems in the field. Travis, after a long hesitation, stood. Security expertise. If you're going into heavy infected territory, you need tactical knowledge. 6 volunteers, enough to operate equipment and provide security. Not so many that we'd compromise facility operations. I studied their faces, seeing determination mixed with fear. The correct emotional balance for dangerous work. We leave tomorrow at dawn. Spend today preparing equipment, reviewing routes, and configuring weapons. Marcus, your facility commander while I'm gone. Chen assists with operations. Russell handles coordination. I met each volunteer's eyes. Make your peace with whatever you need to make peace with. This is genuinely dangerous. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay on the cot in the control room's back corner, listening to the turbine's constant hum, thinking about the decisions that had brought us here. 2 months ago, I was a power plant operator following procedures and collecting a paycheck. Now I was leading armed expeditions into infected territory, negotiating with warlords, managing a survival community, and making life or death resource calculations. The transformation felt inevitable and wrong simultaneously. Nobody had appointed me leader. I'd just been the senior operator who decided to stay, and somehow that became command authority. The crew looked to me for decisions, but I was navigating blind, making judgments without adequate information or training. But someone had to decide. Someone had to calculate risks and allocate resources and determine priorities. In the absence of traditional authority, informal leadership emerged from necessity. I wasn't qualified for this role, but neither was anyone else, and the turbines needed to keep spinning. At 0530, I abandoned the attempt at sleep and began final expedition preparations. The maintenance truck was loaded with tools, fuel, weapons, and emergency supplies. The route to Riverside Junction was plotted with alternate paths identified. Radio protocols were established for maintaining contact. The 6 of us gathered in the vehicle bay as dawn light filtered through the high windows. We looked like soldiers preparing for deployment. Tactical vests, rifles, grim determination. But we were just technicians and operators who'd been forced to become something harder. Rules are simple, I addressed the team. We move together. We don't take unnecessary risks. And if someone gets bitten, they don't come back. We're not heroes. We're technicians executing a difficult mission. Questions? Nobody questioned. We climbed into the truck, and Marcus opened the gate from the control room. The massive barrier rolled aside, revealing the access road and the uncertain world beyond. I took one last look at the facility. The turbine halls, the coal towers, the reinforced fence, everything we'd built and defended for 2 months. Let's go get our coal, I said, and we drove into the morning.